Delta 547, wind 19016, runway 22 right, clear for takeoff.
Runway 22 right, clear for takeoff, Delta 547.
Taxi via
Air traffic controllers protect our nation's airways. These are the stories of real air traffic controllers to boldly deliver a safe, orderly, and expeditious flow of air traffic from their departure point to their final destination.
Wind 19016, runway 22 right, clear for takeoff.
Runway 22 right, clear for takeoff, Delta 547.
I have a question about the strike, and not about who was there during the strike. It's more about relationships. You've got all of you, center and air traffic and tower and all that, and then you establish relationships, I have to imagine, with pilots, etc., right? And then you have the strike come along, and then back again. Was there a difference, I guess, in that, because I mean, I'm assuming that you've probably talked to pilots regularly that you've seen before, and what are relationships like when it comes to air traffic control, pilots, other centers?
I once had a work at a DCA and a brickyard land at Delta, Mercury or something like that. Anyway, he said, "Hey, Tower, I got a question." I thought he was going to have a complaint. And he says to me, "Did you ever work in California, Palo Alto?" I said, "Yeah, 10 years ago." He said, "I've been flying in forever and I finally recognize your voice."
That's kind of like Fred's story. Fred was at New York Center, and then when he went to the academy and came to Houston Center, he was working out there west of San Antonio. A flight of 4 F4s took off, and the lead was, I think, the squadron commander in this particular flight of 4. Do y'all remember that story? And the guy said, "Man, I recognize your voice." And Fred's got a very distinctive voice. He said, "You ever work out in the East Coast?" "Yeah, New York Center." And this guy flew A7s or something out there when Fred was out there. It was interesting. The guy recognized Fred's voice.
Yeah, and another thing that the FAA, well, it used to be more frequent, they called familiarization flights. So it used to be 9 that the controllers had, now it's different. But so we got to fly in the cockpit with the pilots. So we flew in the cockpit. That way we could see what they're doing. Because sometimes we give them an instruction and they don't answer right away. We're like, "What are you doing?" Sometimes, because it's a timing thing, when you're air traffic. Everything has to have, precise. And so if he doesn't answer and you're trying to turn him, put him between 2 planes, there goes that spot that he had. Now he lost his spot. Now you have to recover, adjust the speeds of the 2 aircraft, take him to the end of the line, So we would learn what they were doing, so we could, that's what happens at this point, and all the way to landing, which was very interesting. And then the pilots, they always come into the take-ons, towers, and also they come to see what we're doing. Because sometimes, same thing, they don't realize that we have combined areas and we're working 20 frequencies. So they're like, "Why aren't you answering me?" And I'm like, "Oh, here," Or sometimes when we're talking about a stuck mic, when someone has a stuck mic, you cannot transmit to your aircraft. They're all going and going and going until somehow that pilot recognizes he has a stuck mic. We do have an emergency frequency that we try to see if he's monitoring emergency, and it's like, unstick your mic because it's stuck. But it's very helpful. They always come to do tours where we work, and we do tours. Now after 9/11, because of the incident in the cockpit, they've made it more difficult, as far as the familiarization flights, but they still have them, which is good. Yeah.
I got a small world story I want to tell. And, good thing about FAA for me in my career, and the fact I'd been in the Air Force, that I ran across so many people that I had worked with or known since I was 18. And I retired from DCA, but about 3 months prior to retiring, I flew to Tampa, went to Lakeland Tower, which was a contract tower, as a possibility of getting a job when I retired. So I walk in, there's 2 guys, one guy named Larry, and I introduced myself, Rodney Ship. Larry kept saying, "Rodney Ship, Rodney Ship." He said, "Man, I know that name from somewhere." And I said, "Well, I don't remember any Larry." So I don't know why I told this story. 41 years prior, while in Oklahoma City, we were on a class outing with our instructor. Our instructor's name was Buck. Buck had worked at O'Hare. I don't know if he had burned out or what. But anyway, we're in this class outing, and someone pulled out a joint, a marijuana joint. I don't know if it was Buck But anyway, I'm holding this thing, and Buck says to me, Ship, are you going to pass it or are you going to smoke it? So Larry says, were you hired out of the Great Lakes region? I said, yeah. He was there. That's why he kept saying he knew who I was. I probably passed him the joint, for that matter.
We were going to ask.
Yeah, I didn't inhale. I passed it. My hero.
You know, Joe, the question you asked about, do we know pilots? I think nearly 100% of the pilots that you know are ones that are in your neighborhood or you've met them, you know, in some situation where you're friends. But as far as on the radios and ATC, it's almost nil, almost zero that you're going to end up talking to somebody that you know. Yeah. No. And they're not going to recognize you.
Unless it's Arnold Palmer.
There's some pilots that I do recognize. They recognize my voice when I was talking. And I just couldn't imagine. There's one guy who was my neighbor. He flew for United, and he would, every time when I was working Lake Charles when I was at ZHU, he goes, Dana, and I say, Wade. You know, I don't know how he can remember, but working at the tower and working with and getting, like she said, familiar with the pilots. So quite a few of the United pilots that would fly all the time during the push or the landing, I would know who they would know me, know my voice. So they'll say little things, you know, this is United 285 Heavy. And I'm like, that's Xavier, because he's always had that voice like he is the man, you know. And then we had one pilot, you know, would say, this is Cornbread. So I would know who that was. That was Leo, because he was taking a trip to New York. So it's kind of, you know, when you're in the tower, like you said, you don't really know all of them, but they know your voice, you know.
Yeah.
And one day we were working and Brickyard came over and the guy had a really, really deep voice. And so it was all women in the tower that day in Intercontinental. And I'm like, ladies, you got to hear this man's voice. So I said, I need you to switch over to ground. He's like, I'm airborne, I understand. I need to come up with ground frequency. And so she goes, this is ground. And she goes, God, he's got a beautiful voice. So then we passed him to the tower. We kind of passed him around. Yeah, we did. We passed him around. And then he came back and cleared him a land. And then just right when he got ready to leave, go, we love you. You know? But so we do have fun. And that's a good interaction with them. And but yeah, he had a really nice voice.